this particular day's PPT from day one, traditional methods to post-human age, what all we have come across, and what is that are you expecting with respect to ethics and empathy, and how are we going to really envision our future childhoods, or for that matter, does literature really can literature anytime imagine the future, or for that matter, if it does too, what kind of a future are we envisioning and anticipating with respect to ethics, empathy, and future childhoods that we are planning to look at, that is post-human. So whenever we talk about ethical frameworks in the post-human age, it is very important for us to understand that we have to come from the traditional. We all know that traditional ethics, be it Immanuel Kant's or utilitarianism or humanist, they all make it a point that the center of all knowledge, the center of all understanding, the center of the superiority is nothing but it's man. The only agency that existed during these particular traditional ethics, when we talked about during traditional times, is only that man has got all the agency. And he is supreme when compared to any other beings or any other non-human things, because he has got that power of rational thinking and also decision making. But the idea, the beauty of post-human ethics is that it decenters man. It is actually anti-anthropocentrism. And it also talks about how it is very important that even now, if we only start looking and thinking and anticipating and presuming that man is the center of all the knowledge and he is the only one, I think we are definitely making a mistake, because we have other entities that exist like animals, technologies, and environments. In yesterday and day before and the day before yesterday's class, we've always seen that we don't have, like Haraway, time and again we come back to Haraway's theories and other theories, other thinkers' theories too, because they have always been telling that, be it Rosie's theory also, that they no longer they say that the entity is that our relationality, our subjectivity is no longer something which is very rigid or fixed. It is absolutely fluid, and it is not binding to any binaries as such. That is a reason we understand that ethics are actually becoming very relational. They are emerging each day, and they are very situational. And no longer you can attach to them something called universality. Definitely not. What do I mean by this statement? Because this is very important. Ethics become relational. Yes, they are not at all. Ethics are not absolutely built on fixed principles, because context change. So does in literature we say text and context has a very important understanding. So in the same way, ethics are definitely not based on fixed principles, because they arise out of friendships, relationships between any creature, human and non-human. It can be non-human entities like technology, AI, or for that matter, any other digital being for that matter. And that is what post-human theory always emphasizes: interconnectedness. Human and AI, animals. We also read yesterday that we all are actually absorbed into a data-fied ecosystem. Yes, we all are attached to so many human and non-human interconnectivity that we have been looking at all this while. So ethics actually emerge, they affect and they relate not to one person, but they actually act in tandem with so many other environments that we actually fall into. And then they are emergent. Ethics are not predetermined, as I have been talking just a while ago, that they develop through specific contexts and interactions, which means that they emerge from very complex systems, like how human and machines have very different relationships, or how we all are embedded, entangled, enmeshed in lot of non-human environments also, which are rather imposed from outside. This is not what we think actually to be existing, but rather it is imposed from outside anytime. And also we say ethics are purely situational. Yes, ethics depend on the specific situation rather than universality. We never, and I have also given the statement that ethics are emergent, situational. They are also actually, if you observe, relational, but definitely not universal. So here, if you observe, situational, they depend upon a specific situation rather than universality. What is probably considered ethical in one context, or if I have to give you an example, using AI for decision making in one particular context may be very ethical, but may not be ethical with respect to when we apply the same concepts when we talk about non-human entities like animals, climate justice. When we come to those kind of a topics, probably using this kind of a technology is very not so suggested anytime. Why? Because as I've been talking about ethics, the very aspect and the definition of ethics is very fluid. It changes from situation to situation anytime. For simple example, if a student uses AI to finish his assignment, that is very unethical. But if somebody who is writing a research paper who has to produce the AI report, then the amount of AI that you have used as matter of fact to show somebody a proof is definitely going to be different with what a student uses it to misuse anytime. So it all depends on situation as to how ethics change from context to context anytime. They are not universal. Definitely, they are not dependent on universal principles of Kant, who talks about categorical imperative or utilitarianism. He talks about these two terms mean that people behave, people act. What is right to others, we should also definitely act in the same way, which is categorical imperative and utilitarianism. When we do something, our acts must not really make it a point to make only ourselves happy, but we should definitely make it a point to make everybody else also happy. So probably when we talk about traditional ethics, they are more like we being utilized and we really making ourselves available, or our acts and thought processes being absolutely very much in line with what we think, we being the universal. But probably post-human theory rejects all these things, because it talks about there is nothing called somebody who is at the center, there is somebody called who is at the margin. There's nothing like that, because probably I will use this word responsibility. I'm not talking about responsibility. We will see in one of the theories by Karen Barad. Responsibility. We all come together, in fact, and then we form something new. It's not that we talk only about a responsibility. It all talks about each and every person's response to one particular situation from which we emerge to be interconnected with each other. So post-human theory rejects this universality anytime, and it argues that universal don't account for diverse, entangled realities of a post-human world. As such, when we look at this particular, I don't know if this was shared as in the flyer or brochure. Today, we will definitely see non-normative childhoods also. So you can never think that what is straight remains straight, or for that matter, childhood which is straight cannot always be thought that it is going to be universal. We all have non-normative, non-heteronormative functioning of childhoods also. That is the reason why we look at disability as one. We also look at LGBTQ issues, queer theories. That is what I talk about in this particular other slides also. So you can never say that our universe is actually going to be very, what you can call, very fixed and rigid. No, rather post-human always talks about how there is something beyond the human also. That is something with respect to human itself. There are so many other things like diverse childhoods, or probably the realities that we are entangled with a lot of machines, a lot of AI, and other things also. And probably when I talk about all these things, where you always will get connected to Donna Haraway's theory, Rosie Braidotti's, and Karen Barrett's theory, who talk about ethics as not responsibility but responsibility. That is our ethics are what I can call our responsibility to really respond appropriately in any given situation, not based on abstract principles but on embodied situated knowledge. It is our responsibility to respond with respect to each and every element to be taken into consideration, rather than feeling that you alone actually is responsible for something. It is that coming together and then making it a very positive kind of a response, rather than responsibility that we feel anytime. We will look at this. You'll understand this particular theory when we move across. And then example I can talk about in the film Wall-E 2008, where ethical responsibility is not with respect to, in that particular film that humans show, it is the Wall-E, the robot. It also talks about how it is very ethical for us to really think about ecological balance and emotional empathy to human beings. Yes, and now we come across some ecological ethics which are very important, and these are not being talked by the human agency. They are being talked by non-human agency like robots also, for that matter. Now, what do we mean by this word ethical relationality? Diane J. Davis and Zoe Todd, they argue that ethics is not about rule-based decisions, but responsiveness, the capacity to be affected and to affect others. This is what just a while ago I was talking about, responsibility. It is you behaving in an ethical way that not only affects you, but your acts should definitely have an effect on others, not in a negative way, but absolutely in a very a positive way possible. This is one text which I came across probably in a very different way possible. There is one article written by Diane J. Davis and Zotor on the importance of a date or decolonizing the Anthropocene. When we talk about when did the Anthropocene start, or where are the origins, or how to decolonize, or what do you mean by decolonizing the Anthropocene, these two have really spoken so well because they have given a lot of importance to indigenous knowledge. Probably right now, what is trending in literary groups and literature is with respect to new epochs in literature is Indian knowledge system. But we talked about all these things, or when we talk about the Anthropocene and decentering the Anthropocene, these two have already talked about how it is very important for us to understand that they argued, saying that it is not that the universal colonization during 1610 is actually the fixed starting point of our Anthropocene anytime. No, it is nothing universal. It is absolutely different at different locations. And they also say that they critique the universal human, as we have seen in Kantian, Rousseau's, and all that traditional methods of looking at literature, wherein they supremize the Enlightenment theory, which supremazes only man, but they are actually critique of universal human. Anthropocene narratives erase differences in human impact. Indigenous and marginalized histories also matter. They are of the opinion that when we talk about Anthropocene narratives, they erase differences in human impact. Now, as a human being, possibly we affect several things. This is what we have seen with respect to effect theory by Sylvan Tompkins, or for that matter, thing and object by Bill Brown, or for that matter, we have also seen Sarah Ahmed's theory actually. So when we do some act, as a human, when I act, I definitely have that particular effect felt on so many other beings. It could be any non-human being. If you take an example of a mobile phone, when I touch my mobile phone, yes, I have an effect that I produce with respect to how is my usage with this mobile phone, which is very non-human. So these people talk about how Anthropocene has this habit of actually erasing everything that is not human anytime. But they talk about how it is very important for us to talk about indigenous and marginalized histories also actually matter. A kind of what we can call probably Edward Said in a very different context called post-coloniality. He talked about now. These days, he was talking about the center. The center is there and the margin speaks to center. But later on, there are so many theories which were developed where the margin, right, the emperor writes back is what he says, wherein we know that the center, from the center, whatever whatever we call it, knowledge systems are being shared, that is only from the center. The marginalized are never considered. Same thing, they say that it's no longer that the center holds power. The margins also should be taken into consideration, and it is very important that indigenous, that traditional cultures must also be taken into consideration, because all these definitely affect something called everything called Anthropocene anytime. They rejected this 1950s great acceleration. I don't know if anyone who's dealing with ecological issues or ecological consciousness or ecological feminism or ecological aspects of literature, they definitely know what is this movement called great acceleration. This is a time when there was a lot of industries and human activity was at its peak, and this has resulted in absolute what I can call destruction of the environmental impact. And they say that focus on long-term colonial impacts, not just modern industrialization. So whenever we talk about this particular ecology being disturbed, it is not happening on a day basis. It is something which has happened from the day we were colonized up till now, till even still we say that we have to decolonize much better. So they reject this 1950 great acceleration only as a cause that led to a lot of problem with respect to ecological imbalances and ecological destruction anytime. They say that, oh, there are so many other factors that must be taken into consideration, not only industrialization and colonization anytime. Indigenous knowledge, advocate integrating indigenous ecological knowledge into environmental discourse. This is what I've been telling you. Without considering all facets and all spheres of ethics and ecology, it's any time not possible for us to, probably somebody was asking me the other day that there is something called, we talk in children's literature as children's activism. So yes, until otherwise we understand that it is important for us to really consider ecology not from one perspective, that is a human perspective, but also from indigenous perspective, which is very important. That tribal knowledge, for that matter, Janjatiya studies that ICSSR actually calls it or names it as, all these things pretty much integrate so that we can understand ecology in a better way possible, and environmental discourse can be understood only with respect to all these things which are integrated. Political and ethical focus, dating Anthropocene from 1610 highlights link between colonialism and ecological crisis. Probably we all can also look at how the colonization and ecological crisis are not, which are very new. Like Amitav Ghosh talks about all these things only a century before, or possibly he talks about this a few years ago. It's not that. You have to definitely see that there is a link between all these things from the day we were colonized till date, still when you are not really decolonized. So this is one aspect which is very important for us to look at, because we talk about ethics today, as to what are ethics, empathy, and future childhoods we look into. This is very, very important. And then what happened? Right. One example I can give you here is Atana Juat. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know. It is actually like this. The Fast Runner 2001. Why this particular text is very important? Because it talked about indigenous authorship and language. There is one kind of a language called Inuktitut, which is actually a Canadian, the Inuit people in Canada and the borders of Canada and Arctic regions, probably Labrador, Quebec, and Nunavut, something like that. These kind of regions are what they actually they stay there. And one movie was made entirely on this particular tribe I can talk about, indigenous tribe that I can talk about, which was written by again an Inuit creator only. And this is very, very interesting because he centers Inuit voices, he resists colonial language, and all that he uses in this particular movie are all completely, this film is completely made on everything which is very indigenous. And the storytelling techniques and frameworks were also completely indigenous in their understanding. The cultural representation was also completely with respect to Inuit life, how they were hunters, what kind of spiritual beliefs they had, the governance, the community practices. All these things were only talking about the Inuit tribe anytime, which was in Canada. And the complete film, the story of the film was rooted in Inuit legends and oral histories, ensuring authenticity. If I'm not wrong, these days one word is pretty trending in literature groups and literature circles in academia, that is storytelling techniques and oral storytelling techniques. How storytelling is very important for us to, there is every need to restore storytelling practices, because that is very indigenous in its understanding. So this particular movie also talked about how it is very important for us to really revive all this oral and indigenous storytelling techniques also, because it gives you a lot of authenticity with respect to understanding your own culture anytime. Collaborative storytelling, script was developed with the elders' input, reflecting collective indigenous knowledge and perspective. Relationality with land and non-humans, this is very important. This is where post-human aspects of looking at this very human aspects comes into consideration, because humans, animals, and the entire archetypic environment was shown as very interconnected, which has mutual influence and stewardship, which is what we mean. Futuristic understanding of maintaining the ecological balance without imbalancing it, because future is very uncertain with respect to that. And how it is relating to my previous theory by Todd and Davis theory, that talk about locating the Anthropocene and decolonizing. When do we have to really think? Decolonizing the Anthropocene, this particular film rejects colonial narratives of history and environment impact, highlighting indigenous temporalities. That is, we all probably, the Westerners have a very unfair view of understanding time in a very linear pattern, but we are not like that. We really look at time from a very relational temporality, which is very important, because we believe that time is indicative of connections. Yes, it is very repetitive, and it talks also about coexistence. If I have to give you an example, time is with respect to past, present, future, but our relationships with people exceed beyond that, because in spite of they going away from us, leaving us physically, we have their memories left with us, which is absolutely the presence, which is probably not bound by time when it is in a linear fashion anytime. And we all swear by one phrase that history always repeats. Yes, even in this particular aspect, it is very relational. What has happened before has a connection with what is going to come in the future now. And yes, we all go back to our ancestors and legacy, which is nothing but we coexist with them. In spite of they not being with us physically, they always exist in our mind and in our lives, absolutely. So probably when you have to decolonize Anthropocene, I think there is every necessity that you have to really thwart, we have to subvert all those colonial narratives of history and environmental impact, that because we have something which is very important, that is indigenous temporality, that is looking at time as relational, which will revive all our ecological histories probably which are lost completely as such. And then critique of universal human impact. It is very understood, it is very believed that humans are the real cause of our ecology being disturbed, and that is the reason why Anthropocene, when we talk about post-human theories, they decenter the entire human activity, because that has led to a lot of global warming, or for that matter, what all ecological climate fiction, cli-fi that we talk about in literature, or for that matter, climate problems that we are arising right now, are all because man is at the center actually, because he focuses on rather human-centered and environmental narratives, but not in indigenous knowledges anytime. Integration of indigenous knowledge, as I've been talking about, relational, ethical, ecological practices are very important to write something which is indigenous epistemology. And this is where Todd and Davies actually talk about how it is very important for us to, for some time, get away from the human-centered approach to the non-human-centered approach also. Ethical and political awareness, yes, I'm sure you all will definitely concur with me when I tell you that whatever we have been talking about here right now, they all have the potential to shape children's literature, for the matter childhood also, with respect to political awareness, because when we talk about indigeneity, we talk about there is resilience, there is empathy, there is stewardship, and this is very important for us to even change the narrative of the politics, because when we look at political narratives, they're pretty much into human agency, but what we want right now to maintain proper ethics with respect to childhood studies or ecology is that we have to give a lot of importance to indigenous agency. We have to definitely take into consideration all these aspects which are very important, because we no longer would wish to be bound by colonial environmental discourse, but rather we have to subvert and probably come out with something that is actually indigenous environmental discourse anytime. And then implications for childhood. Childhood ethics move beyond protectionism and control. This we have seen with respect to Sigmund Freud's theory also the other day, panopticon. So we have moved from that protectionism and control. Rather, we are actually, we don't have any parental gaze now. We rather have a digital gaze actually. And that is the reason I always believe in one thing, that children are not becomings. They are not the future adults, but they are beings who are absolutely actively participating in the complex ethical networks that are given to us. And one example that I can tell you, not one but two, is Kashio Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go, wherein there is this world of clones. They also struggle with questions of worth, agency, and care in a future which is completely bioengineered. And then you have one more text called Sean Tan's The Arrival, which is a world. This is actually a graphical novel which has no words used at all, but it has the potential to really evoke empathy and connect you ethically, not only to human, but also to non-human entities as such. These are two examples. And now there is one more theory, not only cyborg theory by Donna Haraway. This is very important theory, that is Donna Haraway's Staying with the Trouble. This is where she talks actually about responsibility. That is our capacity to respond with rather than respond for others. Here she talks about how it is very important for us to do some things which are very collective, by knowing that we are not existing in isolation, but we are making with others, not only making by ourselves anytime. This again talks about, when we are talking about how are we making with others and how are we actually responding, not because we have responsibility, but really we have to respond for others, care and concern. It definitely talks about the very important word, how are we embedded, how are we entangled, and we are no longer isolated in the individuals anytime. We have our technological, that is the reason she talks about how human beings and children these days are part biological and part technological. That is what she says here. And whenever we talk about how we are entangled to others, we don't have any fixed outcome that we can think of. We may have several outcomes, sometimes predetermined, and sometimes they can also be post-determined after something actually happens. So this particular theory by her will talk about how it is very important for us to encourage being present and accountable in this complex, ongoing ecological and social problems, wherein we are only heading towards ecological doom, ecological catastrophe. So she says that let us not operate in isolation as to what I do is not going to affect people. No longer it is like that, whatever we do. And we have seen possibly ecological feminism, ecology or ecological studies, all these things talk about how man is a root cause of all such destruction with respect to climate, with respect to trees, with respect to forests, with respect to ecology. Whatever damage has been done, it is us who are responsible. And we are the people who have actually been lighting up this ecological catastrophe anytime. So we can no longer think that we operate in isolation. Our acts are responsible, our acts are accountable, because we have no one identity now. We have an entangled, embedded, and enmeshed identity these days in 21st century anytime. And here, there is one more theory that Rosie Braidotti talks about, affirmative ethics, that is in her Posthuman 2013. This is a chapter that deals with posthuman ethics, immanence, and relationality. In this, she talks about ethics of becoming. Instead of following fixed moral rules, ethics is all about how we actively participate in shaping ourselves and the world. It's about continuous transformation. Possibly now, all my audience will definitely make a connection between how I was talking about the traditional methods of understanding ethics, which was very universal, but this is no longer universal according to Rosie Braidotti. She talks about how it is very emerging. I have given this statement before too. Ethics are emerging, they are situational, and they are no longer universal anytime. And they're very relational also. That is the reason whenever we talk about post-human ethics, we don't go back to universality, what is fixed is fixed. No, we are in the continuous process of transformation. So does our ethics with respect to post-human understanding are also absolutely not universal, but they keep on changing because we are the people who shape this entire world with respect to non-human entities also. And this shaping is in a continuous process, and it is not going to be universal. We are in a contingent, absolutely. And it also talks about affirming life and difference. Focuses on celebrating diversity, creativity, and life's potential rather than condemning or judging others. Difference is seen as productive. And this is the reason why, I don't know, there is one scholar who was telling me she was dealing with othering. We are absolutely now, I keep on telling this statement to all my students also, and I have to tell this to you too. What do I mean by we being not stereotypical, not judgmental, not absolutely biased, but we welcome a world which is, I say this, which is very much used in children's literature also, DIED, which means diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, DIEB. No longer you can say that the world that we are entangled with, enmeshed with, embedded with is completely what I can call fixed. Actually, there is nothing fixed. It's absolutely fluid. That is the reason we say we celebrate difference actually. And this is seen as very productive, because when we start really being subversive and when we start being non-judgmental and non-stereotypical, we enjoy a kind of inclusivity, diversity, creativity, and we respect the life's potential. We enjoy that rather than really condemning or judging others anytime. So it's time that we embrace difference, inclusion, equity, as well as belonging, because the world is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is what we really all believe in. It's one. And then relational responsibility. Ethical action comes from our connection with others, humans, and emphasizing care, attentiveness in relationships. This is what probably in the nutshell I spoke about. Whenever we have our relationships with others, which are very important, please exercise some care. And please be attentive, because these connections do matter outside human agency. They are actually non-humans too. For simple example, if I have to talk about, probably when we talk about your plan, probably in your locality, people are building a park. Now you no longer can say or think about how the human beings, or for that matter, the residents of that particular colony will enjoy when the park comes up there. No, you no longer can think only from this perspective. It is your responsibility that when you're trying to come up with a park there, what about the trees that are to be cut down? What about the animals who really take shelter in the particular place before the park is made? So now, because your interrelationality is not only with other humans, but it is with other non-humans too, when you think about your actions, they should be very ethical. And they should not really disturb the ecosystem anytime, which is non-human, for that matter, animals also anytime. So this is what she talks about, relational responsibility. Exercise some care, exercise some attentiveness whenever you are trying to build your relationships outside human anytime. Collective and ecological focus. Ethics is not just individual, it considers communities, ecosystems, and the environment. Just now I gave you one example of building a park, wherein you will not consider it only for the benefit of the individuals there, but you have to definitely consider with respect to how you are attached to non-human beings also. Practical, future-oriented ethics encourage experimentation, proactive engagement to create positive change rather than passively following the rules or avoiding any harm. High time for all of us to understand that we have to experiment, we have to take risks, and we have to really engage proactively rather than blindly following the rules that were set up, because probably they will lead us nowhere, because we've understood that ethics are also no longer universal. They are in the process of transformation, they are in the process of relational, they are situational, they are absolutely what you can call not binding, and they're actually fluid anytime. And this is what Rosie Braidotti talks about affirmative ethics. And Jane Bennett's Vibrant Matter, this is very, very famous. A Political Ecology of Things in 2010, she talked about the agency of non-human matter. Objects, materials, things which are in the form of toys, machines, food, material, they all have their own capacity to affect the world and affect the people who are in the world, and they also have the agency of acting in the world anytime. And what is very important at this stage is that we have to call ourselves to ethical attention, calls for recognizing and responding to the vitality and influence of non-human entities in ethical and political thinking. No longer you can say toys have no place in our life. No, they do have in childhood studies also. So they have that what you can call power of affecting, not only on a very common basis, but in the political thinking also. It is very important for us to understand that all these non-human things have the ability to influence exert their power on us also. Assemblages and entanglement. Humans are entangled with non-human things, which is a web of or ecosystem of complex networks. And because we are involved in ecosystems which are very complex, we have to exercise ourselves with respect to having and following ethics. Distributed casualty, power and effect are not just human driven. Non-humans also participate in shaping outcomes. This I have been telling for a while. Only human agency is not what we are looking at. We are also looking at non-human agency also. AI has a power to influence us. Digital media has power to influence us. Animals also have power to influence us. Metals also have power to influence us. So not one, but all the non-human agencies have power to influence us, absolutely. And political and ecological implications. This is what I have talked about. Effect and perception. Humans are affected by and affect non-human matter. Ethics involves sensitivity to those flows of energy and force. At the end of the day, whenever we talk about ethics in post-human, one thing is very important for us to understand, that it is very mutual. We influence and even they influence. We come into contact, they come into contact. So we have a relational subjectivity, which is very fluid and not actually what I can call very rigid. As I have given the example of smartphone only in my previous discourse, if you take the example of smartphone, it is a non-human agency, but they can shape our human behavior. They demand whenever there is a notification popping, it demands our attention. We are influenced by apps to make purchases also. And our social interaction is not only with people who are physical right in front of us face to face, but also who are spread over different media, different accounts, different avatars, different footprints actually. And that is where we say that we exist in lot of probably the relationality and entanglement. We humans are actually affected by electricity, wireless networks, apps, other devices. They all are part and parcel of our interactions anytime. And materials like lithium, rare metals, circuits, they also affect ecological systems through mining, chemical pollution, and e-waste. Here I want to bring in one more. There is one more humanities called actually petro-humanities. Even petrol has the power to really influence us. So does, as I've been talking about metal, all these things have a strong connection with us because we are affected and we are affecting all these things. And when we recognize that the smartphone also has its own understanding, we should definitely understand that this being a combination of several other entities, non-human entities like metal or the circuits and everything, we also should talk about something which is very important, is sustainable development. Sustainable development, that is using it very properly, ecologically, it should not harm, we should recycle. And whenever we are actually talking about technology and human, we also should remember that there is a lot of e-waste being created, and that is really disturbing the entire ecology also. So we should also learn that ethics of sustainable development, which is the new topic that is trending in academia these days. People are a lot talking about, even in humanities and everywhere, people are talking about SDGs, 17 SDGs, sustainable development goals. And even now, ethics also involve the sustainable utilization and sustainable disposal of all these elements which are part and parcel of our environment. And I'm not talking about the Mirai movie, where all the Telugites were part and parcel of my what I can call FDP No Mirai movie, which is a very recent one. And yeah, you can talk about the Mirai, the very own stick that the hero uses in the Telugu movie as a thing and object that you can really use with respect to Bill Brown's theory. But here I'm talking about the Mirai movie, which is actually a Japanese creation, where the stick itself acts as a non-human agency, but it has the power to influence people when it comes into contact with all the 5 elements of nature, which also takes us back to memory, identity, time, family, and now you can definitely understand that this non-human agency has a power to affect us with respect to all these areas of understanding. Relationality and entanglement, this stick connects humans, especially if I talk about the movie. It takes back the hero to his childhood, the mother that he has never seen, and his family, and how he himself uses that to go back in time and come back out in time and really understand how he is conducting a web of interactions, which is not only on a very normal plane, but also beyond the plane anytime. Vitality of matter, the stick is more than an object. That is what Bill Brown's theory. It has transformative power, illustrating not only Bill Brown's theory, but Bennett's idea that matter has got its own vitality. Matter has got its own understanding and importance anytime. Ethical and attentional reflection, the story encourages viewers to reconsider relationships with objects and imagination, recognizing their influence on emotional and social life. I wish people can read up look up to this movie, Mirai movie, Telugu, or even the English, that is actually capable of really clarifying all these things that I'm talking now. And then coming back to Karen Barrett's intraaction. It is not interaction, intraaction and entanglement, which I already discussed in my previous lecture. The core idea is not interaction, but interaction, wherein we separate entities come together to create something new. Nothing exists in isolation. We are all entangled, and we all have material discursive webs anytime. Ethics, according to Barad, it is something, responsibility is not chosen. It is inevitable condition of being entangled. Now, we no longer can say that since I am the supremo, I am at the center of production and creation, I will have whatever I want to do. No, we don't talk about responsibility these days. We talk about responsibility, wherein it becomes inevitable on our part to really have a consideration towards ethical aspect and ethical treatment to non-human things also anytime. And application to childhood, as we've been talking about how children are no one entity, they are actually become technological, and when they become technological, they create their own ecology, and they also should understand that they are part and parcel of this ecology too. So they should be very cautious, very what I can call, they should definitely have that stewardship not to affect environment in a very negative way possible. The toys, the digital avatars, the AI companions are nothing but those interactive agents which are shaping the childhood and the child anytime. Example here are her 2013 film, The Director is Spike Zone, wherein there is one AI called Samantha, and she has that particular emotional and what I can call paranormal also for that matter, understanding and connection with a human called Theodore. So here we can understand that the AI and the human are absolutely co-evolving emotionally, and which is a very good example of post-human relationship. And then we have Kazuo Ishiguro's Clara Anderson, which is very classic example of how AI consciousness has the power to really talk about that love, ethics of love, replacement. And Clara, an artificial friend, embodies all that is very ethical, very lovable, very relational ethics that she forms beyond the human emotion anytime. Mirai, That is what the movie that I was talking about, directed by Mamoru Hosoda. The Mirai stick, which is very symbolic, is and time traveling sister. There are two characters, the stick and the time traveling sister, which shows a very good interaction of memory, technology, effect in shaping the children's ethical becoming. So ethics are very important. Now, this is what I talk about post-human childhoods, which need not be straight, but which can be queer and non-normative also. To queer is to question the norms with respect to gender, growth, temporality, family, or development. And here comes one more very interesting art theory kind of a thing by Catherine Bond, Stockton in the Queer Child Growing Sideways in the 20th Century, also by Lee Edelman, No Future, Queer Theory and the Death Drive. Death Drive is something which is actually, we can go back to Death Drive by even Sigmund Freud, if I'm not wrong, wherein they talk about, they critique linear heteronormative childhoods in post-human childhoods, wherein there is no straight linear temporality. We only have what we can call relational temporality. How is it anytime possible that we only think about childhoods being heteronormative? No, you need not. There are childhoods beyond. They can be homonormative, they can be absolutely fluid, where we call it only as queer anytime. It emphasizes, that is what I said, it is very relational. Identities, our desires are not fixed. They can be fluid anytime. Childhood is historical and culturally. Why we talk about all these sideways of childhood is because we have understood from the very beginning that childhood is not to be considered, which is very fixed and universal, because we have learned from so many theories that childhood is predominantly cultural, socio-political, economical construct. It can never be universal. And that is the reason why we've been seeing literature and media these days, and especially one slide that I have talked about, the Indian evolution of childhood, predominantly 21st century. Right now, what are the genres we are exploring in Indian children's literature is, with respect to very, very encouraging, is queer childhoods that we are actually looking at, kind of a post-human that we can talk about, but not about AI and agency with respect to non-human like AI and artificial intelligence, but yes, with respect to queer theories. How can I tell that? Because I won a award with respect to intersectionality of childhood with respect to queering when I was presenting a paper to University of Chandigarh, wherein I talked about this particular concept of queer theory, intersection of post-coloniality and queer in Indian childhood. And yes, it's very welcoming that in 21st century right now, when we observe lot of theories, lot of texts are talking about these things. Not only this, if we go a little more sideways, we have what I can call even this being talked. Disability has always been there, part and parcel of abled bodies, countering the abled bodies. We also have something called marginalized childhood with respect to caste, creed, and all these things. There are so many texts that I can talk about. Gulabo is one wherein we talk about the night soil child and children and childhoods, absolutely. And then we have, what is this? We call it as, there is one word, I'm unable to recollect that particular theory. All these things are actually developing because we are not looking at any human, but also non-human, and even in human, we are looking at all these sidetracks also which are happening with respect to our childhoods anytime. Actually, caste-based narratives also. I have referred to one text here, which talks about how people have created even clouds with respect to caste, and that is not going to rain in those areas where people are of different caste, but are absolutely only with respect to high caste. So all these things you can definitely explore with respect to childhood also these days, anytime. So we will look at all these things. And Lee Edelman, No Future, Queer Theory and the Death Drive, he talks, they talk about actually cultural fixation, wherein we think childhood only from a future perspective, political perspective, because we talk about reproduction, and for reproduction, it's very important that we create a child and we think a childhood only from straight. No, you don't have to. And this is where the politics involved, wherein they only talk about child and the child care and the nurturing of the child care only with respect to production, with never with respect to understanding them as something which can be disruptive also. Then is the time where we talk about queerness. Queer talks about, subverts all these reproductive futurism, because we can no longer think that we are only rearing a child only to bear in the later stages so that they can continue all these productive phenomena, and politics can also come into this. No longer it is like that. Rather, his core argument is that he will debunk all these things, and he will look at narratives which will serve all sorts of purposes with respect to what society and how society is actually evolving. Queer as anti-future. I will also talk about how queer definitely has the future. We have to look at childhoods not only from one perspective but from different perspectives, and it is quite important for us to understand that we are not rearing a child, and we are not talking about childhoods only with respect to future productivity. No, we have to even talk about how even the queer can claim the present, and not only present but also the future anytime. Death drive, that is what I said, Sigmund Freud's theory, where we have that longing to really end our lives with respect to, if not we are giving lot of importance to normal productivity, we are only thinking that we are going to end our lives absolutely. No, this is not that. What Lee Edelman talks about, queerness also embodies a political and ethical resistance to social reproduction. When you are digressing the norm, it doesn't mean that you have to end up with the end result being which is very lethal. Rather, it can be something that can be thought from a very what I can call digressive perspective also, because even queer has the ability to construct childhoods in the near future to come. And the child these days is only looked at with a lot of continuity. That is what I have been calling reproductive futurism, morality and progress. And not only that, we have to privilege the child who is against the norm, against the normal with respect to queerness, and we should definitely make it a point to look at alternative ways of life also. Political implications, that is what I've been talking about. Everything that we look at with respect to according to the norm will involve politics, because we only are gearing up for things which are going to end up in a better way, with a straightforward way. But that is not the norm now, because we have to look at even queer theories also in the forthcoming days. If we don't look at each and every aspect, we are only going to move towards a very pessimistic and anti-social society anytime. And that is the reason why it is very important for us to assimilate all sorts of beings, hetero or homo-normative also, because these are definitely going to impact childhoods with respect to moral, ethical understanding. That is the reason why we no longer have to bind. We are not bound. We are absolutely fluid anytime. Example test Moonlight. This depicts a black queer childhood which is beyond social perceptions and prescriptions. I would like to bring out here, when I was talking about, when I was planning to do my research in othering, looking at reading difference, and difference can be with respect to anything: sex, caste, creed, gender, able bodies, and even with respect to, that is what, queer bodies, and every damn thing. Let me tell you one thing, when I was actually trying to look at even in the Western text too, I found it very difficult to talk about queer aspects, because not many talk about it. And this is what we talk. When we talk about ethics, we have to definitely remember that don't only think about people from normative. They can be people who are absolutely anti and non-normative also anytime. So Moonlight is one such a story which talks about queer black childhood. And Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman also talks about the how he perceives the childhood and child as a very fluid understanding, which is against that rational thinking with respect to adulthood anytime. The Boy in the Dress by David Walliams celebrates gender fluidity and empathy through play. Indian text, The Blue Umbrella, empathy and individuality in a small child against the social meanness. And we have other texts like Coraline and God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, wherein they celebrate that we have this queer intimacy that we can see, and childhood which is very transgressive beyond societal norms. And is the Missing Queen. We can reimagine mythic childhood and feminine agency through postmodern telling. One, I would tell you, there are so many texts in, because as I said, 21st century Indian children's literature is very positive, because it talks about queering also. You can look up to my paper. because I've published it in one journal, wherein you can look at all those texts that I've discussed with respect to where you can find queering also, wherein I believe that you have to give agency, ethical agency, not only to normative, but anti-normative also anytime. This is very important. And then speculative fiction and ethics. Yes, speculative fiction explores what if of technology, environment, identity, and moral transformation. And post-human childhoods often appear in dystopia, that is where we talk about a loss, we talk about a lot of surveillance, or utopian coexistence and hybridity. It all depends on us. What are we going to take? And utopian futures, childhood, children as hope, or they are the ones who can reboot, transform, or for that matter, metamorphosize entire humanity. Wherein one of the texts that I have done as part of my research in my research PhD is Lagwin's text also. She's an excellent writer. So she talks about, there is one more, the ones who walk away from Homelas. This talks about the ethical trade-offs of happiness built on one child suffering or so many child. The happiness that we derive when one child absolutely suffers is one. Indian speculative lens, Vandana Singh's Ambiguity Machines, where children and machines co-create ethical worlds. Dystopian futures, childhood in peril or they're being exploited, the Hunger Games, children commodified for spectacle, Black Mirror, Archangel, ethics of surveillance parenting. Ega is a Telugu movie wherein we understand rebirth and revenge through insect, human crossing, ethics beyond death and species anytime. The function of empathy, whenever we talk about speculative fiction, sci-fi, they only I also would want to make it one thing very clear. Right now, whenever we look at narratives, they are not only doom narratives, but they're absolutely utopian narratives also. Possibly they give us a possibility to look forward in a positive way by imagining that we are not the only sole proprietors of all this entire earth, but we have something else that is non-human agency that we have to take care of, and we coexist rather than exist absolutely. And we have to take responsibility and accountability of really thinking not only about our agency, but also even their agency. And now, same thing is being repeated here also in this particular thing. But what is very important for us is empathy is not mere sentimentality. It actually becomes techno-ethical capacity. Whenever we are dealing with machines and AI, we are absolutely ethically operating not only with respect to us, but also with respect to them. And one question that I would definitely have is, how do post-human children empathize with machines, aliens, or ecosystems? It has to be answered. But there is one example called Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, wherein an young princess empathizes with giant insects and restores balance between species. This is one text which is very good example of eco-post-human ethics. There are several other things which I've actually given here. You can look up to, and you can see that with respect to Indian speculative fiction, where superpowered beings struggle with responsibility, there is a question which is to be answered. What does empathy mean when our future is very fluid anytime? Is a question, moral question that is actually being raised. And then if this is a bonus to people who want to understand the evolution of children's Indian children's literature. It all began with the colonial beginnings, late 19th and 20th century, wherein we have Chandamama Kadas, Kaka Babura stories by Tagore, Tuntinir Boy stories, which are very, what I can call Indian, and they had the ethics of moral instruction, didactic, and nation building also. Post-independence, 1950s and 1980s realism, education and modernity, Malgudi Days by R.K. Narayan, Rusty series by Ruskin Bond. They talked about everyday ethics, kindness, empathy, resilience, simplicity, and kind of an ecological existence. And then globalization, probably LPG I can call, 1990s and 2010s, we have fantasy, hybridity, technology. Paronan, very, very renowned children's writer, Paronan. She writes on many things. She writes on Kashmir. She writes on childhoods, which are very, very aggressive, probably terrifying, actually. Deepa Agarwal, Ranjit Lal, though very less known, they all actually talk about how children negotiate with global aspects, local values, and diversity also. And now we are in the contemporary post-human phase, 2015 to present, eco-fiction, AI, and inclusivity. And there are so many writings by Nilanjana Roy and Manjula, very, very famous Manjula Padmanabhan. She writes about queerness, and then a crowd called Bhura, Bijal Vacharajani. I wasn't able to find the text on this. That is the reason I personally have shunned away from writing a very good article on all these things. As I said, Bijal Vacharajani talks about casteism, and these people who are writing right now, they are writing about climate ethics, cli-fi, and then animal empathy, ecology, post-human connectivity. So these people are actually addressing what is the post-human aspect of Indian children's literature anytime. And if I have to give you one simple other thing, pre-independence themes were moral fables, folklore, didactic lessons. They talked about anthropomorphism, animals being used, examples like Panchtantra and Ritopadesha. Post-independence, 1950 and 1980s, national building, social virtues, humanist ethics, Shankar's Children's World, Premchand's children's stories, liberalization era, globalization, identity and gender, early pluralism, Paro Anand's No Guns at My Son's Funeral, award-winning book, contemporary 2010s and present digital, ecological, queer narratives, post-human relational ethics, Charles Mahajan's Timmy in Tangles, Vishal Vajrajni's A Cloud Called Bura, Nandita Basu's Rain Must Fall. If you look at Indian children's writing, it is increasingly foregrounding, as I talked about, empathy, diversity, ecological consciousness, and queer childhood. We have moved away from pedagogy, probably to ethical relationality and also empathy for that matter. And then a literary wrap up of what all themes and trajectories we have seen. Childhood, which was very innocent and pure, where children were considered to be becoming, but they have already beings now. Ethics, moral instructions, empathy, feelings for others, tools for learning, co-agency, linear progress, but no longer we are looking at linear, we are looking at multiple sideways also. This is what I have been talking about from day 1 up till day 5. The examples are already given to you, and then you can look up to that. And now one very ethical question even I have. Can literature change futures? Yes. Literature can never predict analysis because we are not actually those data-fied, we are but generative. It doesn't tell us what will happen, but it can definitely tell us what can be imagined and what we can imagine. Absolutely. And this will be done through empathy. Reading and writing train moral imagination, the ability to feel with others, empathetic, and literary children, human or otherwise also, they become laboratories for ethical experimentation to queer and speculative thinking. It tells us that no longer we can think the childhoods only from one perspective. There are other sideways also. And the post-human ethics, as we talked in AI intelligence, AI children, artificial intelligence, and Charlotte's Web or planetary kin, the wild robot, we all only understand that there is no longer a human being existing in isolation, but we are very relational, and our care should also be very relational. Finally, to imagine a different child is to imagine a different future, and post-human literature invites us to become co-dreamers of futures where empathy, ethics, imagination are collective, inclusive, and beyond. Futures are written every time we read ethically. There is missing that, and this I have taken from Rosie Braidotti. And these are the suggested readings that have gone back to really come back to ethics and relationality and other elements of today's topic. I stop sharing now. I'm open for any questions.
Can we have some questions, some reflections?
Rather than questions, I think it's time to reflect.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. If I'm not wrong, I think I have actually answered your questions that you asked me on that day. Ethics part of this. Yes. Hello, ma'am. At the end, can you please answer my question regarding Wednesday series again? Yes, ma'am. Yes. Give me a minute. Let me even share for you so that you can read up. May I take this up with respect to everybody who is interested to definitely know that? It's not a problem, right?
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Just give me a minute because I made a very good understanding of it. For that madam who asked me. Yesterday I couldn't find time. So today let me do that. One place where just a minute. Yes. To that ma'am who asked me this particular question, let me share my slide to you. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now, to that individual who asked me, Bill Brown's theory, I'm sure we all are aware of, thing theory. It talks about how objects become definitely things when they stop functioning for us, and for that matter, when they start really developing something which is not really putting them in the same position, then they become from object to actually they become things, is what I told you. We begin to confront the thingness of objects when they stop working for us. Thing in Wednesday. I think when Madam asked me that day, I couldn't really get that. Later, I just watched that series and I realized very quickly that it is that very amputated, dismembered hand that is the thing which is actually very helpful to that protagonist of Wednesday in the series Wednesday. Ma'am, can we look at the thing in Wednesday, how it moves from object to thing? First of all, I think you and I, everybody else who has seen this particular series, they know that it is a severed hand. Literally, it is an object. But I think this particular thing stops being object and moves and becomes thing when it starts really communicating and feeling. Probably we all remember that thing, that this membered hand is one which collects information for us for Wednesday in that particular series anytime. When that particular hand is dismembered and it is not functioning in the same way how we expect our hand to work, actually, that is a time we draw attention to that particular object which is now made as a thing in that particular series Wednesday also. And this is where the effect theory by Sylvan Tompkins as well as Sarah Ahmed comes into play, where thing conveys loyalty now, care, emotion. That too, it has no words, and it is very, very emotionally significant to Wednesday in that particular series actually. And this is where there is an agency created for that very object which is now turned to thing, wherein it can act independently, because if you recollect, it will spy, it will save, it will write messages, and it does everything that it can as a human being does for our protagonist in the story. And the posthuman symbol, the posthuman always talks about how there is that blur which is no longer existing between human, non-human, living, non-living, object, thing, gender, anything for that matter. It actually gets that subjectivity. And this is the place, time when that very dismembered hand becomes a thing rather than an object. So from Bill Brown's thing theory, we can understand that thing is once a passive object, which is now turned to active, effective, and very meaningful entity. It challenged the human anthropocentric perspective, where we all understand that objects don't feel, objects don't react. I have used 3 words, if you remember, ma'am, that they are reactive, they have an agency, and they are effective also. This is the time when we should definitely understand that very object called thing, when it starts spying, storing, writing messages, giving information to Wednesday, we understand that it is no longer object, it is a thing, because it can feel, it has an agency, it can participate, it can act, and what all a human being does, it also definitely does. In Wednesday, that is the reason thing embodies Bill Brown's thingness, because it is not actually alive. It is not useful to us. It is definitely not at all an object, because it is now turned to a thing because it stopped working for us. That is where it's alive. That is where it's very relational. And that is where it is very significant for us whenever we use it with respect to our narration also anytime. Hopefully, I have answered your question, ma'am. Shreya, ma'am, I think we can write a paper on this. Even I thought the same. Right. Sir, absolutely, whatever you are giving me the text here, I didn't really bring them up, but these are all the texts by Ariès, sir. These are the texts which we can definitely use right now to explore whatever I have told, all these theories in our understanding. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful session.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
just would like to know that you had spoken something about the clouds and caste.
Yes.
So, which book were you referring to?
That is actually a compendium, ma'am. Just a second. The cloud called Bura. There is one text called 1 minute. The girl, 1 second. Just a minute. I'll give you the text. I'll type it in the chat box if it is not.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Right, I'll type it. Excellent novel, ma'am. I must say, it's not even a novel. It's a children's story that talks about how caste becomes a greatest problem for people to even utilize what you can call clouds also will not work for those people who are marginalized, but only for those who are in the better range in caste. That is how it is actually. So let me type it for you. Oh, what happened? Oh, accidentally, I think I was away. So let me type this. This is the text, ma'am. Okay, thank you so much. Right. Ma'am, shall we end the, yeah. Ayushi, ma'am, you have raised your hand.
Good evening, ma'am. The sessions were very insightful, and I'm also working on this area as a doctoral scholar. So I would just like to ask you if you could provide us with like a list of references, like some research papers or books that we could refer to like form a foundation, because children's literature and posthumanism, like how you've connected them, that was very interesting to look at. So if you could provide us like some research papers or like basic reference books to just look at.
You want it on children's literature as such, right, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm so glad that you asked me. I have actually I published a book. I wrote a book on children's literature. It is a kind of a compendium, ma'am. Probably I'll see if I can share that particular book with you as a soft copy to you for your perusal.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're most welcome. Yes, ma'am. I'm so glad whenever we scholars come together and we appreciate what has happened and what has transpired. It's good to see that we all have a lot to learn. And let me think of if I can come up with something else which is very interesting also as part of my next endeavor to NLD anytime. I hope sessions were very interesting. And ma'am, if anyone would be really wish to access to this, I don't have a problem by really giving all these things for those scholars who are in my area of research. I would wish them to really use all this material and come up with a wonderful research which will serve as something which is very good. Yes, ma'am, definitely. I shall definitely give my email address. I thought of sharing one slide on what I am actually, but I refrained from doing that because that's okay anyways. So let me know. This is my professional email ID and my personal email ID. We can definitely connect because I love those people who are working on my topics to definitely get connected and come up with wonderful research for children. Yes, ma'am. Aisha, ma'am, you've raised your hand. I don't know. Yes, ma'am. Please share it. Of course, I shall do that. If you would wish to, I will definitely help you out. There is nothing called intellectuality attached to that. No. Yes, ma'am. Somebody is raising their hand. If you have some questions, please go ahead.
Ayushi ma'am and Poonam ma'am.
They wanted the probably PDF of all these slides. So sure, we will work as soon as this is going to end. Anything else? I'm happy we all can come together, possibly to write something on children's literature. And if anyone would wish to connect, because somebody was also writing on othering, which is my topic, absolutely, I can definitely be of help to you. You can definitely don't think twice at all. You can definitely connect and we can get connected and we can definitely work. We all are budding scholars in this stream, and let us all strive to really make children's literature a mainstream topic for all of us in the forthcoming future to like how Westerns definitely have the subject. And that's all from my end. Anything else? Or we can close.
So this is the last day ma'am is with us. If anyone wishes to interact with her, this is the chance.
And I must say, I thank, today I have to definitely formally give my vote of thanks. I must say that my topic is on othering. I got it, ma'am. I got it because my topic was also, my PhD thesis was reading difference, representation of the other in children's and young adult fiction. By the way, I don't only deal with children's literature, I deal with young adult fiction too. And by the way, my text set was 17 in number. So you can definitely understand where universities will not allow you beyond 6. I was so a kind of a rebellion wherein I was like, I will do on all the 17 texts, and I really read up. I was finding it very difficult to lay my hands on the physical text. So I was definitely browsing it, internet also, and you should know, oh my God, it wasn't really very easy, but yet it was very satisfying when I was conferred the doctoral degree in children's and young adult literature. So I can definitely help you, ma'am. Don't you worry. we will definitely make a way out. And as I said, thank you so much, NLT, and thank you so much, ma'am. You've been a wonderful moderator all the while. And what I can call, it's been so good. It's been so wonderful. All my participants were very eclectic, and they were really interested in this area, and probably that made my deliberations very fruitful. And probably we can definitely get in touch with each other anytime. No strings attached, by the way. And always happy to help you all in your own ways, in whatever ways you want me to. And let us connect in some other FDP if it is possible in the next 4 coming years. See you all and have a great day. And this
So,
is my
ma'am,
yeah.
Thank you so much for such a thought-provoking session. Let me give you a vote of thanks on behalf of all the participants, NLD team, and Gokul Global University. So your analysis of post-human childhoods, very innovative. Its effect on children's psyche, AI's transformative powers. It's something that was very enriching for us, ma'am. Thank you so much. It deeply resonated with us. And especially your conclusions that even apart from empathy, we need to garner more agency to children, and we need to see them beyond the binary of either being passive data points or entirely puerile romanticized beings. So, ma'am, that was something that has sharply been resonating. And it was actually your whole FDP, and this session was a sharp critique of the post-human and post-digitalized age that we are living in. So, ma'am, once again, thank you so much for this thought-provoking session, and we hope to connect with you, and we hope that you will join with NLD once again for another FD.
I am thinking, I don't want to divulge because I have something with respect to probably a kind of a trail, I can say, something on quantum. Quantum physics is doing rounds these days, right? I want to connect that with our
quantum humanities,
ontological or epistemological kind of its
Yes,
effect
ma'am.
on quantum. I don't want to divulge because I'm just thinking as to how should I come up with that. So probably I want to make one thing very clear to all of us who are here today. We are no less than any so-called CSCs, ECs, and anything, because we are the perpetrators and we are the people who actually come up with all those what humanistic, non-humanistic. We are very, very multi and interdisciplinary. So in order to resonate that, I thought, let me come out with something quantum and our literature probably, which will resonate with most of us, because quantum physics, quantum mathematics, quantum mechanics is doing rounds. Let us have quantum humanities also. So that's what is my thought. Let me check out and let me see if I can come out something with that. There's so many things that we can really talk about. That's all. So thank you so much, ma'am. Probably we'll connect later. See you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. So I just want to say that you guys will get a feedback form link in the WhatsApp group, and everybody has to mandatorily fill that form. And after filling that form in your email IDs, which you have given during the time of registration, you guys will get your participation certificate. Okay? Whether any doubt is there regarding this? So should we end? Should I end the session?
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.